James worked as a janitor in one of the tallest glass buildings in the city. Every evening, as the offices became empty and the lights dimmed, he began his shift. He cleaned the long corridors, polished the marble floors, and made sure every desk was spotless by morning. Most people never noticed him. They only noticed the clean office, the shining floors, and the fresh smell when they arrived the next day. But behind all that quiet work was James, a man who carried his mop with pride. James was not just any man. He was a father, and his daughter Alicia was the reason he worked so hard. Alicia often came to the building after school and waited for him in the lobby. She would sit with her school books spread out on her lap, her legs swinging gently from the sofa. While her father pushed carts and carried bags of trash, Alicia studied under the bright lights of the reception area. The security guards and a few employees who worked late often saw her there. Some would smile politely, others would ask what she was reading, but many simply passed by without paying much attention. To them, she was just the janitor's daughter. But to James, she was his world. He dreamed that one day she would not have to live the kind of life he did. James had grown up poor. His parents worked hard but never had much. Opportunities had been rare for him, and though he dreamed of studying, he had to leave school early to earn money. He worked different jobs over the years, but being a janitor gave him steady income. Still, he always reminded Alicia to never stop studying. "Books will take you where mops cannot," he often told her, his voice gentle but filled with hope. Alicia listened. She was a bright girl with curious eyes and a quiet smile. She liked to read stories, solve puzzles, and ask questions that sometimes even James could not answer. When she didn't understand something, she searched until she did. That curiosity became her strength. Every night, after finishing her homework, Alicia would look around the office lobby. She was fascinated by the people who worked in the tall building. She watched as important men and women in suits came down the elevator, carrying laptops and speaking into phones in languages she didn't always understand. She listened to the different sounds of their voices. Some spoke English quickly, while others used words that seemed like music, smooth and flowing. She didn't know it then, but those sounds were planting seeds inside her mind. One evening, as she sat with her books, Alicia heard two visitors speaking in Spanish. She didn't understand their words, but she noticed their expressions and tone. Later, at home, she searched in the small library near their neighborhood and borrowed a beginner's Spanish book. She practiced quietly, repeating words to herself in the mirror. Her father watched her with amusement. "You want to learn Spanish now?" he asked. "Yes," Alicia said with determination. "I want to know what people are saying. I don't want to just listen. I want to understand." James smiled. He didn't know where this passion would take her, but he supported her. He always believed that if Alicia set her mind to something, she could do it. Life was not easy for them. They lived in a modest apartment where the walls were thin and the furniture was old. James often came home late at night, tired and with sore feet. Sometimes his hands ached from scrubbing floors and carrying heavy trash bags. Yet, he never complained in front of his daughter. Instead, he encouraged her to dream beyond the four walls of their small home. On weekends, when most children played outside, Alicia could be found with books spread around her. She not only studied school subjects but also borrowed language books, dictionaries, and even watched foreign shows with subtitles. She found joy in repeating new words, trying to get the accent right. Her laughter filled the room whenever she made a mistake, but she kept trying until she got it correct. James sometimes worried that people would judge Alicia for being the janitor's daughter. He knew how society could be quick to place labels on people. But Alicia didn't seem to care. She carried herself with quiet confidence, even when other kids made remarks about her father's job. Once, when a classmate teased her, Alicia replied softly, My father works hard so people like your parents can work in clean offices. He's proud of what he does, and I'm proud of him too. That simple answer left her classmates silent. In school, Alicia's teachers noticed her focus and determination. She was not the loudest student, but she was one of the most persistent. She asked questions until she fully understood, and she turned in homework with care. Some teachers encouraged her to explore her love for languages. They gave her extra books, and one even introduced her to online resources where she could hear the way words were spoken. At night, Alicia often stayed awake long after finishing her homework, writing new words in notebooks. She filled pages with vocabulary lists, practicing them until she could say them with ease. Her father, exhausted after work, sometimes fell asleep in the armchair nearby. Alicia would quietly cover him with a blanket and then go back to her studies. She understood that his sacrifices were the foundation of her dreams. There were times when James worried if he was giving Alicia enough. He couldn't afford expensive tutors or language programs. He couldn't buy her the latest gadgets or books. But Alicia never complained. She was resourceful. She borrowed books, used free resources, and practiced with anyone she could find. Sometimes she even spoke to strangers in their languages just to practice. Many were surprised at her courage, but they admired her determination. The bond between father and daughter grew stronger with every passing day. They laughed together, supported each other, and shared small victories. When Alicia got good grades, James celebrated as if she had won a medal. When James got tired, Alicia massaged his shoulders and told him, "One day, Dad, you won't have to work so hard. One day, I'll make sure you rest." James didn't say much, but inside, her words gave him strength. He believed in her more than he believed in himself. By the time Alicia reached her teenage years, her ability to learn languages became remarkable. She already spoke English and Spanish well, and she was picking up French. She would listen to employees at the office and try to copy their pronunciation. She even practiced writing notes in different scripts, fascinated by the way words looked in other languages. People around her started noticing. Teachers praised her talent, neighbors admired her, and even the security guards at the office building joked that Alicia would one day run the place. James listened to these comments with quiet pride. Deep down, he believed it too. For now, though, they remained in their simple life. James continued his janitor's job, and Alicia continued studying wherever she could. She was not aware of it yet, but every night she spent waiting in the lobby, every word she learned from strangers, and every book she borrowed was shaping her future. What seemed ordinary at the time was preparing her for an extraordinary moment that would one day change both her life and her father's forever. As Alicia grew older, her love for languages became stronger. By the time she entered high school, she was already speaking Spanish with ease and had started learning French. Her notebooks were filled with colorful words written in neat lines, and the corners of the pages were worn from constant use. She carried those notebooks everywhere, as if they were treasures more valuable than gold. Her classmates sometimes wondered why she spent so much time on something that wasn't part of the regular school curriculum. While many teenagers were busy with music, fashion, or sports, Alicia would sit quietly at a table in the library, repeating words under her breath. She would whisper phrases to herself, listening carefully to the rhythm and melody of each language. Some laughed at her, saying, "Why are you wasting time on that? You'll never need it." Alicia simply smiled and replied, "One day, I will." Her teachers admired her persistence. One of her language teachers, Mrs. Daniels, noticed Alicia's passion and began giving her extra lessons during lunch breaks. She introduced Alicia to French films with subtitles, songs that carried new words in their lyrics, and simple stories written in foreign languages. Alicia absorbed it all like a sponge. She didn't just memorize words, she understood the feelings behind them. She realized that language was not only about communication but also about respect for another culture, another way of life. At home, James noticed the change in his daughter. He often found her at the kitchen table, her eyes focused on a book, or in front of their old computer, repeating words along with videos she found online. Sometimes she even stuck little notes around the apartment on the fridge, on the bathroom mirror, even on the TV, each with a word in a different language. Window, fenetra, ventana, one note read. James laughed at first, but soon he found himself repeating the words too. One night, as he was resting after work, Alicia asked him, "Dad, do you think it's silly for me to spend so much time on this?" James looked at her with seriousness. "No dream is silly if your heart is in it. Remember, Alicia, I clean offices so you can open doors that I never could. If languages are your passion, then follow it. One day, they might take you further than you can imagine." His words sank deep into her heart. She held them close whenever she felt tired or doubted herself. By her late teens, Alicia had become fluent in 4 languages: English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. She could hold conversations with ease, switching between them like a musician changing instruments. She even began practicing Mandarin, fascinated by the complexity of the characters and tones. She wrote the symbols slowly, carefully, trying to perfect each stroke. It was difficult, but Alicia enjoyed the challenge. Her world was beginning to expand. When she volunteered at local community events, she often found people who spoke little English. Alicia would greet them in their own languages, and the joy on their faces made her realize how powerful her gift truly was. For them, hearing their mother tongue in a foreign land was like finding a piece of home. For Alicia, it was proof that she could make a difference. James was proud but also a little worried. He sometimes wondered if her skills would actually give her a future. He knew how the world worked: people often judged by appearances, by background, by family names. And Alicia was still the janitor's daughter. He wanted her to dream big, but he also wanted her to be realistic. Yet whenever he looked into her determined eyes, his doubts faded. She was not just learning for fun, she was preparing for something greater, even if they both didn't know what it was yet. In high school, Alicia's reputation began to spread. Teachers invited her to help new immigrant students feel comfortable. She translated for parents during school meetings and even helped classmates understand lessons written in foreign textbooks. While others saw language as a subject, Alicia lived it. She spoke with taxi drivers, shopkeepers, and anyone willing to teach her a new phrase. Slowly, she was building bridges between people who might otherwise never connect. There were days when Alicia felt exhausted. Balancing school, part-time jobs, and her endless studies was not easy. Money was always tight at home, and she often had to wear the same pair of shoes until they wore out. While her classmates dreamed of expensive colleges, Alicia worried about whether she and her father would have enough for rent. But instead of breaking her spirit, these struggles made her stronger. Every challenge reminded her of her father's sacrifices: the long nights of work, the quiet meals, the tired smile he carried. She knew she couldn't waste his efforts. One memory stayed with her vividly. It was a rainy evening. James had returned home soaked, his uniform damp and shoes muddy. He sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his tired hands. Alicia came to him with a notebook filled with Chinese characters. "Look, Dad, I learned how to write these today," she said with excitement. James, though exhausted, leaned closer and studied the page as if it were a masterpiece. "I don't understand a single line of it," he said with a chuckle, "but I understand your dedication. That's enough for me." Alicia hugged him, her heart swelling with gratitude. By the time she reached her 20s, Alicia was fluent in 7 languages: English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Mandarin, Arabic, and Italian. She had achieved something extraordinary, though quietly. She didn't boast or seek applause. Instead, she used her knowledge to help others whenever she could. She tutored younger students in her neighborhood, sometimes free of charge. She helped neighbors fill out forms written in languages they couldn't understand. She became a silent helper in her community, earning respect even from those who once dismissed her as just the janitor's daughter. Her father continued his janitor job, proud but humble. Sometimes co-workers at the office would ask him about his daughter. "I heard she speaks many languages," they would say. James would smile softly, his eyes shining with pride. "Yes, she does. More than I can count." He never bragged, but inside, he carried Alicia's achievements as if they were his own medals. Though Alicia was achieving more each day, she remained grounded. She never forgot the small apartment, the smell of cleaning supplies on her father's clothes, or the sound of his tired footsteps after a long shift. Those details were her roots. She knew her gift was not just for her own success but also a way to honor the man who gave up his dreams so she could chase hers. What Alicia didn't know was that her skills were about to be tested in a way she could never imagine. Her years of hard work, quiet study, and endless curiosity had prepared her for something much bigger. It would not be in a classroom, or at a community event, but in the very same glass building where her father had mopped floors for years. The moment was coming, and when it arrived, her life and her father's would change forever. It was a cold morning in early winter when Alicia's life took a surprising turn. James had an extra shift at the company because a co-worker had called in sick, and he asked Alicia to come with him. She was now in her early 20s, still living with her father to save money, and she often accompanied him when he worked late. She would sit quietly with her laptop or a book, sometimes studying, sometimes just keeping him company so he wouldn't feel alone during the long nights. That evening, the building buzzed with unusual energy. The normally quiet office floor was filled with executives in sharp suits and assistants running around with papers. The air carried a sense of urgency. Even the security guards looked more alert than usual. Something big was about to happen. James noticed the change, but he kept to his work. He quietly pushed his cart and carried cleaning supplies as he had done for years. But Alicia, ever curious, watched the people rushing past. She overheard bits of conversation, words like contract, deadline, and millions at stake. It was clear that the company was preparing for an important meeting. Around midnight, as James was mopping the marble floor near the main conference room, two employees rushed by, their voices tense. "The translators aren't here yet," one said. "If they don't show up, the whole deal could fall apart," the other replied. Alicia's ears perked up. "Translators?" She leaned closer to her father. "Dad, what's happening?" James shrugged. "I don't know, but it looks serious." "Don't worry about it. Just sit and read your book." But Alicia couldn't ignore the energy around her. She peeked through the glass wall of the conference room. Inside, she saw the company's CEO, Mr. Richardson, pacing back and forth. He was a tall man in his 50s, known for his sharp mind and serious expression. Around him sat a group of executives, all looking stressed. Across the table were foreign clients, men and women in formal suits, speaking quickly in different languages. The room was tense, almost chaotic. Without translators, the CEO and his team struggled to communicate. Important details were being lost. Alicia could sense that the situation was dangerous for the company. A few minutes later, one of the assistants came rushing out, speaking into her phone. "They're not coming," she whispered anxiously. "The translators cancelled last minute. We have no backup." The words made Alicia's heart race. She glanced at her father. He looked down, focused on his mop, but she could see the concern in his eyes. He might not understand all the business talk, but he knew enough to realize something big was slipping away. James didn't like to interfere in things that weren't his. He believed his role was simple: do his job quietly and leave without being noticed. But that night, as he looked at his daughter, an idea sparked in his mind. He cleared his throat, walked hesitantly toward one of the assistants, and said, "Excuse me, sir. I know this may sound strange, but my daughter, she speaks languages." The assistant, already stressed, barely looked at him. "Languages? What kind of languages?" "She can speak Spanish, French, Mandarin, Arabic," James began listing, his voice quiet but steady. The assistant stopped, finally paying attention. "Are you serious?" "Yes," James replied, pointing to Alicia. She stood a few steps away, clutching her notebook nervously. Within moments, the assistant brought the message inside the conference room. The executives looked doubtful when they saw Alicia. Whispers spread across the room, "The janitor's daughter. Could she really handle something this important?" After all, this was not a classroom exercise. This was a high-stakes business meeting involving millions of dollars. The CEO himself came to the door. His sharp eyes studied Alicia for a long moment. "Is it true?" he asked directly. "You speak these languages?" Alicia swallowed her nerves but answered firmly, "Yes, sir. I do." Mr. Richardson hesitated. Time was running out, and the foreign clients were already looking impatient. He didn't have the luxury to debate. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Come in. Let's see what you can do." James placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder as she stepped into the brightly lit conference room. He didn't say much, but his eyes told her everything. "I believe in you." The room was tense. The clients spoke rapidly in Mandarin, switching to French, then Spanish, trying to make their points clear. Alicia listened carefully, her heart beating fast, but her mind steady. She began to translate, her voice calm and confident. To the amazement of everyone in the room, she shifted smoothly from one language to another, not missing a beat. The executives leaned forward, impressed. The clients, who had looked frustrated just moments ago, began to relax. Finally, they could express themselves without fear of being misunderstood. At one point, a client used an idiom in Arabic that didn't make sense when directly translated. Alicia paused for just a second, then skillfully explained the meaning in English, capturing the cultural nuance. The executives nodded in relief, realizing how easily a misunderstanding could have ruined the discussion. The meeting stretched on for hours. Alicia stood by the table, moving her focus from one group to another, making sure every word was clear, every intention respected. She didn't just repeat words, she carried the tone, the politeness, the respect hidden between the lines. Slowly, trust began to build between the two sides. Smiles replaced frowns, and agreements began to form. Outside the room, James continued working quietly, though his hands shook slightly with nerves. Every now and then, he peeked inside. He saw his daughter standing tall, her voice filling the room with confidence. He had always believed in her, but seeing her in action was more than pride, it was awe. For Alicia, the moment felt almost unreal. All those nights of studying alone, the endless notebooks, the practice with strangers, everything had led to this. She didn't feel like just the janitor's daughter anymore. She felt like someone who had something valuable to offer, someone who could change the course of events with her gift. As dawn approached, the meeting finally came to a close. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, and relief filled the room. The $30 million deal had been saved. The CEO turned to Alicia, his expression softened with gratitude. "You did something remarkable tonight," he said. "Without you, this deal would have collapsed. You've given this company a chance we almost lost." Alicia smiled shyly, her cheeks warm. "I was only doing what I could," she replied. But everyone in that room knew she had done far more than what she could. She had rescued a sinking ship with nothing but her knowledge, courage, and composure. When she stepped out of the conference room, James was waiting in the hallway. He didn't say a word at first, just wrapped his arms around her. His uniform smelled faintly of cleaning supplies, but to Alicia, it was the scent of sacrifice and love. "I told you, Alicia," he whispered. "Books will take you where mops cannot." She hugged him tighter, her eyes shining with tears. At that moment, she knew her life was about to change forever. Alicia stood in the middle of the conference room, her hands resting lightly on the table, her mind focused like never before. Around her, the air was heavy with tension. On one side sat the company's CEO, Mr. Richardson, and his team of executives. On the other side sat the international clients, their faces sharp with concentration, their voices layered with urgency. Every word mattered, every sentence carried weight. She took a deep breath and began. A client spoke quickly in Mandarin, his tone serious. Alicia listened carefully, her eyes steady, and then translated the words into clear English. She didn't just repeat what he said, she delivered it with the same seriousness, making sure the weight of his message was not lost. Mr. Richardson leaned forward, nodding. Moments later, another client replied in French, his voice calmer, almost persuasive. Alicia switched without hesitation, her tone softening to match his. She moved gracefully from one language to another, like a musician playing different instruments in perfect harmony. The executives were astonished. Just hours ago, they had been panicking, unable to understand their partners. Now, thanks to Alicia, the meeting was flowing. What had seemed impossible was suddenly manageable. But it wasn't easy. Alicia's heart raced, and every muscle in her body was tense. Translating was not just about words, it was about capturing meaning, culture, and emotion. At times, she had to pause for a split second, carefully choosing the right words so that no misunderstanding would occur. Each time she succeeded, relief washed over her, but she knew the next challenge was only seconds away. At one critical point, the discussion turned heated. One of the foreign clients raised his voice in Arabic, clearly upset about a clause in the contract. The executives looked alarmed, not knowing what was wrong. Alicia stayed calm. She listened carefully, then explained in English, "He feels that the phrasing of this condition sounds disrespectful in his culture. He is not against the agreement, but he needs the wording to reflect mutual respect." The executives immediately understood. They quickly adjusted the phrasing, and the client's expression softened. The tension eased. Alicia had just prevented a misunderstanding that could have broken the deal completely. As the meeting went on, Alicia became more confident. The nervous girl who had stepped into the room now stood tall, her voice steady and strong. She could feel the clients beginning to trust her. They looked at her directly when they spoke, knowing she would carry their meaning faithfully to the other side. And the executives, who had first doubted her, now watched her with admiration. James, standing quietly in the corner of the room, witnessed it all. He had never felt prouder. For years, he had scrubbed these floors, polished the tables, and emptied the trash in this very building. He had been invisible to most people here. But now, his daughter was the center of the room, the key to saving everything. His eyes filled with tears, but he quickly blinked them away. He wanted to look strong for her. Hours passed, but Alicia did not falter. She translated Mandarin into English, English into French, French into Spanish, and sometimes even added clarifications in Arabic or Italian. Her brain was working like a finely tuned machine, but her heart kept her grounded. She wasn't just speaking words, she was building bridges of trust, keeping the conversation alive when it could have easily collapsed. At one point, a moment of silence fell over the room. The clients whispered among themselves, discussing a final detail in Mandarin. Alicia waited patiently, then translated their decision. They were ready to move forward, but only if one small change was made in the delivery timeline. The executives glanced at each other, considered the adjustment, and agreed. And just like that, the impossible deal began to take shape. Smiles replaced frowns, nods replaced arguments. The atmosphere shifted from tension to relief. Finally, as dawn began to break outside the tall glass windows, the agreement was complete. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, and the $30 million deal was saved. Everyone in the room exhaled as if they had been holding their breath all night. The executives clapped each other on the back, whispering words of relief. The clients smiled, their trust restored. And in the center of it all stood Alicia, the young woman no one had expected, the daughter of the janitor who had just saved the company from disaster. Mr. Richardson approached her. His face, usually stern, was softer now, touched with genuine gratitude. "Young lady," he said, his voice firm but warm, "you have done something extraordinary tonight. Without you, this deal would have collapsed. You didn't just translate, you kept respect alive in this room. That is something no machine, no app, and no ordinary translator could have done. You have a gift." Alicia lowered her eyes modestly. "Thank you, sir. I was only trying to help." The CEO smiled slightly. "You didn't just help, you saved us." He turned to the executives. "Let this be clear, this company owes its success tonight to her." The room filled with nods of agreement. Even the clients gave Alicia a respectful smile, acknowledging her role. When she stepped out of the conference room, her father was waiting in the hallway. He looked at her with pride that words could not describe. "You did it, Alicia," he whispered. She smiled, tired but glowing. "I just used what you always told me, Dad. You said books would take me where mops could not. Tonight, they did." James pulled her into a hug, not caring who saw. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible in the building. People passing by looked at him with new eyes, not just as the janitor, but as the father of the young woman who had saved a $30 million deal. That night, as they walked home together, the street seemed different. The same old city lights shone brighter, the air felt fresher, and every step carried a new weight of possibility. Alicia knew this was not the end of her journey, it was the beginning. Something inside her told her that the world had just opened a door she had been waiting to enter. But most importantly, she knew she hadn't walked through it alone. Her father's sacrifices, his quiet nights of hard work, his endless belief in her, that was the real foundation of her success. Without him, she would never have stood in that conference room. As they reached their apartment, James turned to her and said softly, "I always knew you were meant for more, Alicia. Tonight, the world knows it too." She looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "And one day, Dad, I'll make sure you never have to work another night shift again." For James, that promise was worth more than any deal, more than any millions. It was proof that his struggles had never been in vain. And for Alicia, it was just the start of a journey that would carry her far beyond what either of them had imagined. The morning after the meeting, Alicia woke up still feeling as though the night had been a dream. The image of the shining conference table, the sharp voices of the clients, the grateful look on the CEO's face, all of it played in her mind again and again. She lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling of their modest apartment, and wondered how one ordinary night had turned into something that would change her life. Her father, James, was already up, preparing breakfast. He moved slowly, his back aching from years of hard work, but there was a lightness in his steps that morning. When Alicia walked into the kitchen, he looked at her with the same proud smile he had worn all night. "Good morning, world changer," he teased softly. Alicia laughed, shaking her head. "Dad, it was just one meeting." "Just one meeting?" James raised his eyebrows. "That one meeting saved $30 million. That one meeting showed the world who you are. Don't ever call it just one." She smiled, though her cheeks grew warm. Deep down, she knew her father was right. Something had shifted, not only in the company but also in how people saw her and in how she saw herself. Later that afternoon, her phone rang. To her surprise, it was Mr. Richardson, the CEO himself. His voice was calm but direct. "Alicia, I would like you to come to the office today. We have something to discuss." Nervous but curious, Alicia agreed. She put on her best dress, though it was simple, and walked beside her father to the glass building she knew so well. The security guards greeted her differently that day. Instead of polite nods, they smiled warmly, as if they were proud to know her. The receptionist, who had often overlooked her, now said, "Good to see you again, miss." For the first time, Alicia felt the building opening its doors to her in a new way. Inside, she was led to the CEO's office. It was large, with tall windows overlooking the city. Mr. Richardson stood by the desk, his hands folded. He gestured for Alicia to sit. "I won't waste your time," he began. "Last night, you did something that not even the most experienced professional could have done. You saved our deal. You carried this company on your shoulders, and you did it with grace. I want to offer you a position here as our international liaison." Alicia's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm not even." "You don't need to doubt yourself," Mr. Richardson interrupted gently. "You have a gift, and you have proven that you can handle pressure. We'll provide training for the business side of things, but your language skills, your ability to connect people, that's something no school can teach. We need you, Alicia." For a moment, Alicia couldn't speak. She thought of all the nights spent writing words in notebooks, all the hours of practice, all the sacrifices her father had made. This was more than a job offer, it was an opening to a life she had only dreamed about. She finally found her voice. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." Mr. Richardson nodded. "I know you will." When she stepped out of the office, her father was waiting in the hallway. One look at her face and he knew the news. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "Dad, we did it. I got the job." Tears filled James's eyes, though he tried to blink them away. "You deserve it, Alicia. Every bit of it." From that day forward, Alicia's life began to change. She started working at the company in a professional role, dressed in neat business clothes instead of her usual casual ones. She sat at conference tables as a respected colleague, not as a guest. She traveled with the company team to meetings in other cities and even other countries. Wherever she went, her ability to speak 7 languages opened doors. People who had once been distant or cautious warmed to her instantly when she greeted them in their mother tongue. She didn't just speak words, she created connections. James watched with pride as his daughter blossomed. For years, he had been the invisible worker in the background, but now, people in the company treated him differently. "You're Alicia's father," they would say with respect. For the first time, his role as a janitor didn't define him. His identity was tied to the daughter he had raised so well. Alicia, however, never let success change her heart. She remained humble and grounded. She still returned to their small apartment every evening, often cooking dinner for her father and asking about his day. When her first paycheck came, she handed it to James and said, "This is for you. You've carried me all these years, it's time I carry you." James refused at first, but Alicia insisted. Slowly, she began to ease his burdens. She helped with bills, bought him new shoes to replace his worn-out pair, and even encouraged him to take a few days off work. Eventually, with her steady income, she convinced him to retire from his night shifts. "You've cleaned enough floors for a lifetime, Dad," she said with a smile. "Now it's time for you to rest." The day James finally hung up his janitor's uniform for good was one of the happiest days of his life. He no longer carried cleaning supplies through the building, but when he visited, people still greeted him warmly, not as the janitor, but as Alicia's father. Alicia didn't stop at building her own career. She remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, to be judged as just the janitor's daughter. She wanted other young people from humble backgrounds to believe in their potential too. With part of her salary, she started a small community program where children could learn new skills, especially languages. She offered free tutoring sessions, gathered donated books, and even invited her colleagues to volunteer. The program grew quickly. Children from different neighborhoods came together, laughing and learning. Many of them had never imagined they could speak another language, but Alicia showed them it was possible. She told them, "Your background does not limit your future. What matters is your effort, your dedication, and your belief in yourself." Her story began to spread. Newspapers wrote about the janitor's daughter who saved a $30 million deal. Schools invited her to speak to students. Community leaders praised her for giving back. Alicia remained modest through it all. "I didn't do it alone," she would always say. "I had a father who believed in me, even when the world didn't." Years later, Alicia stood once more in the lobby of the glass building where her journey had begun. But this time, she wasn't waiting for her father while he cleaned floors. She entered through the front doors as a respected professional, her badge granting her access to every level of the building. James walked beside her, no longer carrying a mop, but carrying pride. They paused for a moment, looking around. Alicia remembered sitting on the lobby couch as a child, swinging her legs while doing homework. James remembered pushing his cart past the same spot, tired but determined. Now, they stood side by side, equals in dignity, bound by love and sacrifice. "Do you see, Dad?" Alicia said softly. "We've come full circle." James nodded, his eyes shining. "Yes, Alicia. And this is only the beginning." For Alicia, the future was wide open. She knew there would be more challenges, more doors to open, more bridges to build. But she also knew she carried something greater than knowledge of 7 languages. She carried the story of resilience, love, and faith, a story that proved no background was too humble, no dream too big. And so, the janitor's daughter who once waited quietly in the lobby became a woman who spoke across nations, built connections across cultures, and carried her father's dream into the world.